Welcome, everyone, to the Ontology Summit 2025. Today is the 2nd of April, 2025, and this is the second session of the third track, From Reality to Data. And today we welcome Alican Tuzun, and the host today will be Mike Bennett, who is running the third track. So to you, Mike.
Thank you, Ken. So today I'd like to introduce Alican Tüzün. Alican is a PhD student with a strong mechanical and robotic systems engineering background, and is currently focused on data-driven business analysis, including semantic models for business methodologies and broader ecosystem, and also has a keen interest in metaphysics and currently engaged in studying Aristotle. So Alican, I look forward to your presentation today. If you'd like to share your slides, then I shall hand it over to you as soon as you're ready to share.
Yeah, sure. I can share it. So I will share the whole screen, basically, because I have only one screen anyways. So I will just use the screen. So yeah. So I guess all can see. Maybe I can small this up somehow. Oh yeah, okay. No, it's good. So that today today's talk, as Mike introduced, so there's track 3, which is about from reality to the data, where I will mostly talk about the blind spots, business ecosystems, and the role of semantics, how we can actually look through the complexity of the business ecosystem itself. So that I titled it as a behind blood spots, like how semantic strategies reveal hidden insights in the business world. And hopefully I can introduce such things which I inserted in the first place. But first, I want to start with the challenge. Then we will look into the solution. So as you may maybe know, this phone, it was from the 2002, if I remember correctly. It was in that time was the best phone, basically. Still, I guess, unbreakable, as some claims. But this phone was everyone's phone, basically. Everyone using this, everyone was making the calls, everyone was doing like a messaging and so on. So that this was like a, so to speak, the best product in the 2002. But for us, not the product, but the company, which is the Nokia, is the crucial point, which we will talk later. So that the Nokia itself was the inventor of such phones, and it was not the only phone they get it. They actually were a really innovative company, in my opinion, where they introduced lots of phones, such as this one, for example. I remember the time when this phone was introduced, and it was able to have a joystick, for example, in the middle, and then you could like take like a pictures, and then they could run videos and so on. So it was crazy at that time when someone had this one and we wanted to buy this one. It's exactly like the iPhone moment, but it was in the old days. So they didn't actually stick with it. See, they also introduced, as I said, due to the innovation, they knew that the people were playing games on the PlayStation and so on. So that they said, yeah, why not? We are bringing it to the hands. So that they introduced the Engage. Why I am showing this is, as you can see, we cannot blame the company to be uninnovative, because if you look their product portfolio, it was fantastic. So that they started with everyday use phones to the gaming console type stuff. They introduced some innovative solutions like a joysticks, taking camera, running video, and so on. But actually, if we look through the history, so what we are talking about is the 2008, something happened, and then the company actually started losing its value in the market. And if we can see the numbers here, we are talking about 50 billion euro to the nearly to the 12 billion euro, which is a substantial decrease of the revenue. And yeah, of course, there were like a multiple interpretations why such thing occurred, but we will look into the one specific type. And yeah, you might question why it happened. Actually, this was happened. The Samsung introduced the S1 phones, and the iPhone in the other end introduced the first generation of the iPhones, basically. Apple, sorry, introduced the first generation of the Apple. And after introducing this thing, the Nokia was gone. Basically, if you see this slope, the main reason was the introduction of these two phones. And if you look to the history, you will see that it matches to the times which I showed you the data from the Statistica. But my interpretation why such thing occurred was actually a decision making of the Nokia itself, because the Nokia phones were using a operating system which is called the Symbian, and the new phones which was introduced, the Android and the iOS, they were using more modern approaches. For example, Symbian, if I'm not mistaken, was written with C++, and if you want to develop something, it was taking lots of time. On the other hand, the Android and the iOS was actually looking through the easy to write, let's say, developments. That's why you saw that Android developer, iOS developer, and so on, but there was nothing like a Nokia developer, but they were like a Symbian developers, which they struggled a lot. So through the time, because of this decision of keeping the Symbian and not going to the Android and iOS, at that time I'm speaking, now they changed their mind. They got stuck with this decision of taking only the Symbian OS. So in the future, what happened? Actually, it got diminished. I guess if I remember correctly, in 2010, the OS was no more, so that they got out from the market, and then now it was the Android phones versus the iPhone. Still today, it's the same paradigm happens. So that after that time, actually people were talking about the Android phones. Is the Samsung better? Is the other one better? And the other ones were saying, is the iPhone better? And so on. So the discussion totally changed, the paradigm of the phones, basically. And what I might claim is actually the organization as a Nokia didn't look out, so to speak, but they kept their capabilities. They were really proud of their product portfolio and so on, so that they stuck at their organization. And even though they were looking for the technologies, which technologies they come and they were adapting it, their core decision-making idea was based on this operating system. And if you look through the Symbian OS, you will see lots of memes about how the Nokia felt because of it. But today, actually, in the modern time, it is not the case, because if I took screenshots from lots of LLM companies, so to speak, like which giving out something like a ChatGPT. Like, for example, the first one is the Gemini, the other one is the ChatGPT, the third one is the DeepSeek, and so on. And as you can see, all of them are nearly have the same type of thing, so that they are offering a deep search. They are offering reason capabilities, like a deep thing, it says reason, but more or less they are doing the same thing. Or the deep research, they are calling it, so that this is also has a deep search. Grok has a deep search and also super deep search or something like that, which they are adding. But what I'm trying to say here is actually these companies are looking at each other, not only through the organization, but they are looking outside of the organization. So, sorry. So, yeah, so that we say, okay, so we are not going to be Nokia because we know what happened to them. We want to be like a more modern way. So the idea is we have our organization, but now actually we want to look outside of the organization. But as you maybe know from the startup process, what the people are doing, they are after they are saying we are going to look outside, they just look at the outside and then going back to their organization. So that even though they say that we are looking through the innovative solutions within the ecosystems, we are not doing so. We are just focusing on our product, and then they are just coding and then trying to finish up. That's why, in my opinion, my interpretation is that's the other reason why the many startups actually fail, not because their products are really bad or something, but because of the decisions which is taken within the ecosystem. So we don't want this look basically in our organization, and we want to somehow fix this problem so that we We know that it's a complex system. We know that it's hard to do, but as an organization, we need to overcome this issue. So this is a challenge number 2. The first challenge was I talked about the Nokia, so the keeping in the organization. And the second challenge is looking through the ecosystem, the business ecosystem. And what is the business ecosystem? Business is in the ecosystem, and outside of the business is the ecosystem, so the outside of the organization itself. So this is the thing which we want. So we want to look for the outside. So now I speak about the case where, okay, we are going to do it, how we are going to do it, so that I will talk some about the literature, like how people are actually doing it. And later on, we will develop our idea. So the first thing is they are saying, okay, we know that it's a complex, but I have a really great idea and I have great experience throughout the world, so that I think the business ecosystems runs like that. So that many literature actually talks about without a methodology. If you look through the business articles, they are just telling you what their idea is and how they perceive it, so that they are just creating a theory in my vocabulary that about the world, about the business ecosystems itself. And then what later many researchers are doing, they have some sort of theory, and then they are using this theory. This theory can be mathematical model, agent-based model, whatever model you want. And then they are taking the data from the reality, and then they are trying to test if their theory matches with the data. If the theory matches with the data, then they are good to go. They are saying, yeah, we modeled the ecosystem, and then we go like this. There is nothing wrong with it. In the philosophy of science, it is hypodeductive modeling. There are different criticism about it, but we are not talking about the philosophy today. But I just wanted to show you the literature. The other way around is, okay, we had the theory. Now we are not looking at the theory. We are saying, okay, we look for the evidence. So first we start how the companies are actually do within some ecosystem. It can be, for example, wind energy ecosystem. It can be defense industry ecosystem, how you want to name it. And then based on that, we collect the evidence from this ecosystem. And through gathering the evidence, we come up with a theory. So this is also a solid approach, which you can do through the generalization, abstraction, however you want to call it. And then we gather the theory based on the data, so that we are starting from the data and going to the theory. But there is some problems with it. But before that, in the literature, I took an example of one author's claim about the ecosystem of the Apple and Samsung. It looks fantastic. It looks really nice, like two watermelons. But the idea is, as a strategic analyzer, if you look such thing, it doesn't mean you anything. So first, maybe you can derive some patterns, which is a solid point throughout such networks. But when it comes to the interpretation of the visualization, it lacks the semantics. So basically the meaning, because if you look at the weights between these nodes, first of all, what are these nodes and how they connect to each other, these things are missing. And most of the methodology runs on embedding analysis, so that they are embedding and then they are finding semantic similarities based on some models. And in this case, the relationship between the nodes are not natural language-likely semantic, but model-based semantic. So it is the similarity is based on some score which is derived from the model itself. You can find patterns with it, but when it comes to the interpretation, it is really hard to filter, really hard to get a knowledge out of such complex visualizations. Another thing is why my skepticism increased, because when I looked through the literature of these graphs, you can see, for example, the three nodes here: stuffed toys, appliances and fixtures, and cosmetics. I got really confused, because then comes the e-commerce and so on. E-commerce to tourism, I can understand this similarity, but I cannot understand this similarity. Why I am struggling to do, even though I am doing this strategic analysis, that I don't know what is actually the weights mean. I know how he derived. He derived through the embeddings, but to the analyst, it is meaningless. I need to know exactly what is meant by this relationship or this relationship in order for me to get a better decision to my ecosystem. You are familiar with this visualization. I also got many, like, inspired heavily on this view. And in this case, in this visualization, in my opinion, there is one crucial terminology, which is this knowledge soup. I like it very much. Because why? Because if you look at the this one, to me, it's a knowledge soup because I know that there's a knowledge inside it. But in order to get what I want within this soup, I need to work really hard, actually. It is not so easy to do. And imagine that if your knowledge soup is really complex, it becomes near to impossible to analyze, because within this soup, imagine that you are eating a noodles and then you want some sort of vegetable in this noodle, and your bowl is like this. You need to dwell and then find this vegetable inside this knowledge soup, which is waste of time and waste of cost for the companies or the organization. So this is not in my opinion, or my interpretation, so to speak, not the correct way for the strategic analyst to look into it. So I am also want to say that this look is database, so that we start from the word, getting evidence, and through that we are creating the theory. I use the same, so to speak, approach, and not the other one, which I mentioned in the first place. But my argument is, my suspicion or my hypothesis is, maybe if you can bind the two sides together at the same time, all the time, maybe through the emergence, we can maybe have a better representation of the business ecosystems, which would be better for the strategic analysis to indulge. So we have, so far we talked about the two challenges. Now the third challenge, which is fully practical, where should we start? Because even though I said that we start collecting the data through the ecosystem, where should we really start? Because if I say, yeah, okay, I collect the data from the wind energy ecosystem, yeah, it's okay, I can do it. But it is not easy to know where to start. So this is the third challenge. So I asked a question. I said, okay, how can we extend the business ecosystem frameworks, which is in the literature, to effectively bridge the evidence and theory? This is the amalgamation which I was talking about, to derive meaningful representations for the strategic analyst, so that he can basically analyze the complex business ecosystems. And therefore, I introduced a framework, which is the extension of the previous frameworks, with inclusion of the semantics. So this is the framework. It looks a bit, let's say, complex, but it is in the end not so hard. And if you see the 0 to the 7, you will see that we are creating some sort of knowledge graph. But to create this knowledge graph, basically, we are using the existing frameworks or existing ideas, so that we start actually from the domain of interest. It can be anything, as we said, for example, the wind energy ecosystem, and then we derive a question out of it. We use this question to derive the theory. We formalize this theory somehow. And then after that, we are also defining data collection methodology and. But in the end, we come up to the knowledge graph, and then we get the knowledge out of this knowledge graph, and then we are visualized and then answer the guiding question. So this is the main idea. I will go through quickly for one case, which is with the real question from the domain, and how I worked out to create such things. So we start with the domain of interest. I am using domain of interest as the wind energy ecosystem, where what is the justification of it? It was totally from the company side. But if you look such a graph, it means that there's money. So they said, okay, we wanted to get money from this environment, basically, so that they wanted to analyze this ecosystem. Probably Nokia also thought something like that on the phone industry, which is not enough to engage on it. But the thing is, we now want to analyze, and we just not saying, okay, there exists a demand so that we will stay in this industry, but we wanted to see what is there. So this guiding question is the one question which is derived from the list of the questions. So it is an exemplary question, and the question was, how do specific companies establish their positions through product and service delivery interactions within the wind energy ecosystem? It looks simple, but not so simple to analyze. We will see in the future. But this is one example of how the managers, for example, looking for within the different industries. And in our case, as you can see, it is about the wind energy ecosystem. So now I talk about the theory, so that's how we are going to drive the theory when we come up with such a question. If you look at the question, actually, the question has some things which the manager wants to know. So for example, he wants to know about specific companies. He wants to know their positions. He wants to know the product and service delivery interactions within the WindEnergy ecosystem. So that these are the concepts of the things which he wants to know from that specific ecosystem. If we observe these concepts, actually they have some sort of theoretical understanding behind it, even though it's not explicitly said how the specific companies, according to the organization theory, established their. He's not saying such thing because it's implicit. But if we make it explicit, because I know the context, that's why I could drive it really easily. So that, for example, specific companies, he's talking about the organization theory. If he says product service delivery interactions, he's talking about the supply chain dynamics. If he says that WindEnergy ecosystems, he's talking business ecosystem theory, and then you can derive such theories based on your question, and then you can start to consider yourselves, because in the end, you are the responsible person, basically, to help the managers as an analyst to get what they want. It is not what you want, but what they want actually is the critical point. So that's why we are starting with the question. So the seed ontology is basically, I gave only the 2 examples. Why we are creating this seed ontology? Because I want to keep the things which they want to know so that I can show them later in the visualization. And one perfect way to do it is the formalization of the concepts which was requested from the managers. So for example, in this case, I took the company and I took the delivers to, and then I formalized it based on the context. For example, the company is, I said it's a subclass of organization. How do I know this? From the organization theory. How the delivers to is an inverse relation to the receives from, because of the supply chain dynamics and so on. So that this type of formalization has been done in order to analyze the ecosystem, which we will look later. So far now, we actually started from the domain, get the guiding question through the interaction with the managers, and then we got the theory, which I talked about, and then we formalized the theory based on the analyzing the language of the question which we divide. One question might be, yesterday, one, in my opinion, very smart person asked if I am using another business theories. In this case, you can include your theory, but be careful, because if you include your theory, then your interpretation of the result will be based on your theory. So that if your manager does not have an idea about this theory, he will see mumbling, jumbling. But if he knows what he knows, what he wants to know, then you can include it, of course. For example, the question theory was the Porter's 5 forces, if I remember correctly. So now, yeah, we came to this. Now we are going forward to the 3-4. So you can see there are 2 trees because it is occurring at the same time, because it is the next step from the theory. And then we are also talking about the data itself. So this is the methodology I used to get data from the domain, which is the business ecosystems, basically, WindEnergy ecosystem. So that what I did, I went to the WindEnergy Hamburg. So it is the biggest expo for the WindEnergy ecosystems. Why I went there? Because the people who are there are the experts which are within that domain. So they are the best candidate to get an information from. As this colleague, for example, not colleague, the guy from the one company, where I derived when I got information from that specific person. But as you can see, there are lots of stuff here because it is not just one question. I answered lots of questions. And for us, actually, the important point lies here. And I will show you why the theory actually influences your data collection methodology. If we see here, first of all, I asked about the company type. What I meant was I didn't want their company because it is not a great way to in this case, not a great way to do the analysis, and also gives anonymity to the person which I'm interviewing with. So that he said, for example, my company type is the original equipment manufacturer, so the OEM. But if we observe more, actually, I am talking about the deliverers, receivers, and also a specific company. Actually, these things were what the managers wanted to know. So basically, they wanted to know the specific company, the company type, delivers, receivers, and so on. In this case, in this research, I anonymized it. So it was, this question has no value to the company which we partnered with, but we wanted to see if I can implement such things, and then it gives the value. So that's the reason why it is. But as you can see, it is embedded. The theory is embedded within the data collection methodology, which we have shown. As well as if you can see why I used such thing, because if I used it, then I didn't have much time in the expo, so that I needed a quick interaction. So that's why I gave the survey and not, for example, interview. I tried the interview, by the way, but it was impossible to do within an expo setting. So now we got the data, basically, as well as the data collection method. Data is the ones that he filled out. So that now we go to the next steps, basically, the formalization of the data and the induction. So it's that one data I narratived it, so to speak, so that it looks compact. But it is, for example, with the organization 0, some company which I get the data from, he's saying that he's an engineering consulting company and a spare part provider. It's interesting. And then it delivers its products and services to the service companies, wind turbine owners, wind turbine manufacturers, also receives products and services from spare part manufacturers. All right, yeah, that's cool. And if we look his text or the data which we gathered, even though he is talking about in English language, in this case, he's talking about different things. So that's the orange one is an individual company in this world, basically a company A, for example, or you can give BMW, Mercedes, some company which is occurs in the expo. But the red ones, he doesn't give me any information about the company. He gives me an information about the sets of the company. I will come to it. So that he is talking about an engineering consulting company. In this case, we know which company it is, but for example, when it says it delivers to the service companies, we don't know which service company it is. So how we can interpret this type of things? Basically, I take it as a sign, and then I say, okay, wind turbine manufacturers, is it a individual or a set? It's a set because he doesn't specify me what this thing, but I can interpret it as a set. And then when I take as a set, I can then formalize it as a oval set, basically oval class. So when I do such a thing, I iteratively do for every data I have, so that I will get such a list of classes, list of object properties. But these object properties we have, if you remember, done it in the seed ontology. And then specific companies, which is the organization 0, for example. As you may know, in the OL2, you cannot use the object property between the classes and the individuals. So in order to do it, you need 2 individuals. And one actually technique they introduced with RDF-based semantics, in my opinion, is the pruning, so that you can reference the class and the individual as with the same IRI or the same reference, so that you can use it to create the relationships between them. There's a problem with it. I will talk about the limitation of it, but this is the technique also we use to derive this relationship. And after we derive this relationship, because of it is valid in all 2 discretionary logic profile, the deductive inference will be done by the reason. So there is no problem at all. But what I here mean is we iteratively do this thing so that we drive the information which we want, basically. So now the topic is the knowledge graph. I need to check how much time I have. Okay, I will be quicker. The knowledge graph is here there are lots of definitions in the knowledge graph, but I will give you the practical, like what we observed basically during my work, not only from this, but many works. If we see the number 7 here, everything before it is actually can be interpreted as creating the knowledge graph. So it is the process which leads to the knowledge graph in the end through amalgamation of the data, as we have shown here with the blue lines, with the green lines, which is showing the theory based stuff. And then through doing this, we actually come up with the knowledge graph. But knowledge graph, we are not constricting directly. It actually emerges through this data theory amalgamation. So for example, here we also said that the ontology evolves. How it evolves? Because as I said, from the text data, we got these sets. What are the sets? Sets are the classes where this classes stands for. They stands in the ontology. So that the seed ontology actually also evolves through time when we got to the new evidence from the field, and which results in the knowledge graph. So that we say that the knowledge graph is an emergent system which emerges through data and theory amalgamation. So that we are playing, and when we are done with the evidence, actually the resultant is the knowledge graph. After that, you can validate it. You can check if your theory is correct based on the domain expert. But in our work, we didn't yet integrated such thing, but it is planned, of course, because it's needed in the end. Because as I said, the goal is to answer the question which the manager asked as a strategic analyst. So this was, I jumped to the Sparkle part because I don't have time, but I provided everything which you'll see in except the visualization to the GitHub so that you can see it also on your own, the queries, everything, because I'm more open science guy, so that I am a believer on it. So that now I will talk about the observed limitation of the O2DL, which we come up from our work. So that when we see the gearbox manufacturer X is delivering to the wind turbine manufacturer, we have such a statement. How is the interpretation? Is the interpretation like that? Is the interpretation is the above? Or is the interpretation as the third one? What we argue is actually it is not the three cases, because if we make the English language more explicit, what we are saying is there exists a gearbox manufacturer X, which we know because we got the data, which delivers to some wind turbine manufacturer, but we don't know. So there is a relationship exists between an individual and some set, and in this case, the set is the wind turbine manufacturer set. So that we have an individual, but we don't know to whom he sent it. But what we know is he sent to the wind turbine manufacturer. So I want to capture this semantics, exactly this semantics with the O2. How we do it, as I said, we introduce the pruning, to get this semantics. It looks right. It is valid in the O2DL, no problem. So that we said that there exists a gearbox manufacturer X, which delivers to some wind turbine manufacturer. Here is an important point, in my opinion, when you, not in my opinion, but it is evident through the visualizations, you can also try it yourself. When we pune the class, actually we are changing the semantics of the object properties, but we are looking into it. Maybe we will discuss it further, but what we argue is it becomes an existential quantification relationship between the individual and the class, and not the object property. Even though you cannot see it in the protege, the semantics is like that. So the limitation is, I said, okay, we did the pruning, but when it comes to the superclass, because both of them are the manufacturer, so that what we want to say, if it delivers to some wind turbine manufacturer, so any wind turbine manufacturer we don't know, it should also true that it should deliver to some manufacturer which we also don't know, because it is valid, because the manufacturer is a wind turbine manufacturer is a subclass of the manufacturer, so that it should hold true by deductive inference through, for example, first order logic. But this thing which I said is not valid in the O2DL. So for example, when I said try to say this, you can say it, but it will not infer the upper relationship. It can be in the same class, it can be on the other superclass, it doesn't matter. This thing holds for every this subclass relationships. We also tested this, and tests are also in the GitHub page, which I will post so that you can see and try it yourself. We tried it with OWL2 Ready and OWL2 RL, if I'm not mistaken, so that we actually tried it with the property chains, because it was the logical one, the subclass relationship with the relationship which we have done. Also, we tried it by giving individual delivers to some class relationship, which also not possible through the reasoner, but possible with OWL2 Real because it uses RDF-based semantics. So now I will actually do something brave, and I will show you the prototype of it. If you can tell me that you can see it, it will be great, because I'm not sure.
Yeah, we're seeing your. Oh, it's moved.
All right, now it should come up. Yeah. Can you see it, the screen?
Yeah, we see bouncy balls.
Perfect.
Always a helpful visualization.
Perfect. Okay. So here you can see that because I said that we cannot infer this, so we wrote just a script basically to get this inference which we wanted to do. But we will change the language probably. We will see. But the idea is now with this script we are getting this behavior basically, so that if you can see this Dragon Ball looking things are like organizations basically, and this is the theory basically, the organization embedded within the ontology. And the orange ones says that it is inferred because it inferred from the script which we implemented. The colors are the granularity levels, so we are at the root level now, so everything actually somehow interacts with the organization. Not somehow, in this case, is the delivery. So if we go further lower and lower, we will see that, for example, the organization, it can be either a company or it can be a non-profit organization and so on. These things we derived from the organization theory, as I said, the theory which we have built it in our seed ontology, so that if we go down further, we will see that it expands, because the expansion occurs. Why? Because we are going to the lower granularity levels, as well as inferring that upper class relationship. So if we look through if I can find the example with my own eye, yeah. So if we click the organization 7, of course, in reality, this is a real company. And we can see that there are two blue lines, and the orange ones, as I said, orange ones are the inferred and the blue ones are the original relationship. What it means from the data we saw these things. But I will show you something interesting. When we click on the consulting service company, which is the type in the OL2, we can see that both relationships are inferred. What does this mean? This means that somehow, you can see it also through the data, somehow it inferred these relationships, but within the data, it is not possible to do. So this is where the emergence occurs, because the relationship does not exist in the data. This relationship does not exist in the theory, but when it comes to together, we can see these relationships through the emergence. So, and what is now the question is why it is valuable for the managers, because now we can see that organization 11, 32, and 7, between these real companies in the real world, the consulting service company actually plays the intermediate role, which is something, as I mentioned, cannot be seen by the data. So this is the blind spot for the strategic analyst when it looks such thing. Of course, now we are doing the manual work so that I manually look through the nodes and then I'm trying to find patterns. But as you may guess, you can use the graph theory and then you can try to find the patterns through this amalgamation of the theory and the data, which is our future work actually. But still, it gives the results for the manager, which he was interested on. How do specific companies actually positions themselves within the complex business ecosystems? And then we can see that organization 7 and organization 11, for example, positions itself where the consulting service company plays the intermediate role between them. So they are doing something with the consulting service company, but here it's implicit because maybe other questions answer such question through the product service interactions. So this was the quick short demo. So I want to go to the future and then I will finish the talk. So I will go really fast. And the future work, actually, I mentioned already that we need to improve the visualization to maybe drive patterns. And also the problem is I use the D3 JavaScript, which actually lags after if you have more than 150 nodes, so that there is a solution with the canvas, which I will go through. The other thing is the integration, the validation to the framework, so that we somehow need more cooperation with the managers who are asking this question, so that we can validate if the flow which we are going is okay for them. And the change in the language means I told you that the OL2 DL had some limitation, and maybe we can overcome this by using the OL2 Real. But then our specifications changed totally because, for example, I was using as a tech stack like Protege and using the OL2 Ready, which I need to change probably. And the other thing is the integrating the induction techniques. Our induction technique is very naive now. We are looking through the interpretation based on the sign. But in the literatures or the philosophy of science literature, there are like, for example, methodologies like inference to the best explanation. Also, John Sowa, I guess, likes it, calls it abduction. But in the right now, the literature is called inference to the best explanation, for example, from Peter Lipton. And the semi-automation, for example, detecting the concepts. If something is missing, it can be checked by the LLM if we can ask it if I missed anything. The other important thing is the complexity. So now we have this structure which is based on the same edges, so that we can actually use the structural complexity. One example I will give you, we did some analysis based on the clicks, so that if 3 nodes are coming together, we were getting them as a modules, and then we were trying to interpret what they mean. It's fantastic approach for analyzing the this kind of structures. And of course, the semi-automated knowledge system, which I showed you, I am now clicking and then I'm looking through this complex network, but it should be maybe semi-automatically, or it should somehow give recommendations where such patterns could occur. So that was my talk for today. I managed to do it, I guess, less than 40 minutes. So it is, I speak very quickly because I needed to cover, but hopefully it was very helpful for you, and also will open up discussion. So if you feel free to reach me on the LinkedIn, you can scan the QR code, and then you can see, you can talk about what I discussed today, or the more if you want to know. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you, Alican. Great talk. A lot of interesting insights and things to question there. So we'll open it up for questions. There's a few in the chat already, mostly from Ravi and one from TS, who I presume is Todd Schneider, but I'm not sure. I think what we'll do is let people raise their hands, including those who've put questions in the chat, and see who has what questions for you. So I don't know if anybody wants to raise their hand first, or here's one. TS. T, over to you. What's your question, please?
Hello, Michael. This is that you're right in interpreting the TS as Todd Schneider. I tried to be more discreet on Zoom. Thank you for that presentation. I find it very interesting, to say the least. But I have some technical questions. You mentioned you used a script to create those relations in that graph that you showed us. Why did you not use a reasoner? And could you tell us more about the script? Is it just a graph traversal script?
Correct. So it is a graph reversal script. That's correct. Why we didn't use the reasoner was because the based on the OL2 DL, the reasoner cannot infer such things. That was the limitation which I was talking about. But the OL2 real actually does this job. But we were not in this. I'm just talking about in this work. So we improved it, of course, after the initial work. But now actually the discussion was, do we go to the OL2 real so that the reasoner works and then we dismiss this script, or we go to the like a prologue or the first order logic so that we eliminate the OL2 real as well. But for your curiosity, I also uploaded the script so that you can see it. But it is basically, as you said, the graph reversal algorithm. Yeah, nothing special.
Okay, thank you. And I don't know if I missed it, but you said you were using punning in OWL2. How did you use punning?
It is like in the ontology, like a protege, or you can write it also with you in the RDF with the same IRI. You declare a named individual based on the same name as the class.
Oh,
so
okay. But you did it for those companies that you couldn't identify explicitly, correct?
Correct. Exactly.
Okay. One last question, which is an embarrassment to me. How do you pronounce your first name?
Alican.
I'm sorry. Say again, please.
Alican.
Thank you very much.
Yeah,
Apologies, I've been pronouncing wrong all this time. I do apologize.
It's okay.
I looked up your surname, but to get the umlauts, but I didn't I forgot that Turkish has a soft C. I should have known that.
It's okay.
So, Gary Berg-Cross, which I believe I've pronounced correctly. You're up next.
Exactly right, Mike. So I had a question motivated by the Nokia example to begin with, and then your use of an idea of an ecosystem, which we saw in the graph you identified inferred intermediary companies that were relied on. When I think of it, so that's some aspect of an ecosystem. But when I think of an ecosystem, I think of evolution. So Nokia failed because it didn't anticipate the eventual environment it was going to be working in. And it seems that's the difficulty of evolution is predicting what's going to be able to be reproducible. So I imagine that aspect of it is not something you could get to. So your Nokia example sort of is a motivator, but it's sort of beyond what I thought your tool, your whole system could actually help with.
So, yeah, it's actually a great question, and it shows two different paradigms actually in the business. One paradigm is this adaptability of the system, so that you have the company, and whatever comes from the outside, your company should be adapted to this outside forces, so to speak. For example, the cybernetic management, they are focusing on these aspects. But the other aspects is you go out and then see how this thing is valuable to the customer. You see that, for example, in Nokia case, for example, Nokia, if you look at the Nokia phones, they also had this touch screens, they also had this great functionalities, but they didn't know how this thing was valuable to the customer in what way. So that if they knew why this question, basically, they would go through that strategy, but they stick with their own operating system for some reason we don't know, by saying that, yeah, okay, this doesn't impact the customer value, which was misinterpretation to the manager, basically.
Yeah, if I just might add a follow-up, that helps.
Mm-hmm.
Can you give an example about how some of this outer environment is represented in the model you have? You're talking about what's inside the company, obviously, including company relationships, but how is the ecosystem, the larger ecosystem, represented in the model you currently have?
I can give you another question. I guess it will be more clear. So in the wind energy, for example, the wind turbine manufacturers actually have different types of wind turbines. And one type of wind turbine is the direct drive, which means that they are putting the rotor directly to the generator. And in the middle, there is no gearbox. There is also not some parts of it, I don't quite remember now. But the crucial thing is, in the gearbox, there are also small components. So if we look at the whole graph I showed you, it was showing not only one type of the wind turbine, but it was showing, for example, offshore turbines, it was showing onshore turbines, it was showing direct turbines or indirect turbines, so that the company should know exactly how much % they are contributing to which technology, and how this technology is valuable to the customer. In this case, for example, customer of the wind turbine manufacturer is the wind turbine operator. And in order to discuss these things with the managers, they need to see, and then you need to justify how you derive these questions or the answers to their questions, basically. Is it a better explanation?
Yes, it is helpful. I just have one last thing, which
sure.
is, it seems like in an evolutionary sense, they would need to know the competitors, both within wind and alternative sources to wind. And I'm not sure you're gathering that, surveying that yet, but I mean, that might be something you could get to later on. But
yeah, it depends on their budget. If they say that, yeah, we are also interested in nuclear power or the solar power and how they are fighting with each other or something, then the question becomes, as you said, your question. So basically, for example, does the solar energy ecosystem influences wind energy ecosystem, and how it will result in influencing to us? So this is the question that it's a more complex question, but if they budget for it, then why not?
okay.
Okay, thanks, Gary. So, Todd, your hand is up again. So, you're up
Yes,
next.
Alican, one of Gary's questions, or your response to one of his questions, prompted another one for me. It had to do with this notion of the ecosystem that you are working with. What distinguishes the organizations as being in or out? And specifically, in the context or in the case of Nokia, Nokia was making cell phones. Nokia was, I think that's correct past tense, a very large organization. And in particular, in addition to making the consumer facing or consumer products, the cell phones, they also made huge amounts of base station equipment for the cellular system itself. So how do you, in these very large companies, the multinational companies, for instance, how do you address the fact that one business unit of the same large international company might be part of the ecosystem as opposed to some external business, some external company? And does it make a difference in the analysis?
Yeah, exactly. So it's actually a really nice question, and also it touches to the theory, which is called the micro-organizational theory. So which means that, because as you said, Nokia is a huge organization, but within this organization, there are smaller organizations, so to speak, like if we look through the system theory. Now we are actually looking to the inside of the organization, but still okay for us. But what we are dealing with is we are dealing with the divisions, so that there are different divisions, and each division most of the time represents this micro organization within that bigger organization, so that we are actually focusing on what this micro organization does and not the big, because the interaction between the inside the company, as I said, is not my interest yet. What I'm interested in is the focusing on this micro organizations, if you would like to say. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, well, I don't know business organization theory, so I'll certainly believe you. But you don't think that there are cases where the different business units, as you would say, micro-organizations in the same company could impact one another? I mean, literally, they could be creating almost competitive products. I can't think of any examples right now, but I know there's some out there. Again, the way some of these conglomerate organizations are now being created is by private equity firms, where they just buy up all sorts of companies. And in fact, they can buy up competing companies and let them run as competitions, but they're still, if you like, organizations inside the private equity company like Blackstone, or I forget whoever the other ones are.
Yeah, it's a solid point, and it would have such an impact. But our goal is to explain basically the ecosystem to the manager and not predict. Maybe if we would do the causal analysis of how things are, like a causally impacting each other, that is totally another story. And I stand in like a critical realism part. I don't think that is predictable in any case. But what we are offering is we are offering an explanation to the manager so that they can understand their ecosystem.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thanks, Todd. Janet Singer, you're up next.
Yeah, thanks. This is really good, getting into the actual process of data analysis, theorizing, model building, iteratively trying to show broad ecosystem interactions and causal modeling, as you just said. What I'm wondering is, what is specifically ontological about this? Isn't this just good modeling? So you use OWL, but anyway, so what is ontological? You're not referring to a top-level ontology. You're not. Are you addressing metaphysical issues, metaphysical categories, that kind of thing?
Yeah, it's actually a great question, and it is something to do with the quality of the work. So if most of the analysis which is required from managers should be done in the 5 days. So that's what their demand. So that's when they want to enter some new market. Imagine that they are not just wanted to enter one market, but they want to enter to the 20. So that we need to give them like a 20 different analysis basically to answer their questions sometimes. If they would give me time, I would include the top level ontology. I would start to discuss what these organizations really are and so on. Like, for example, Barry Smith says that every ontology should have a description of the classes which should be inserted. But these are, for the pragmatic cases, not always possible. So in order, of course, if it would be better, it would give us better analytics. but we don't have such time basically to do
Right.
this quickly.
Well, actually, I don't know if that's true. That's an interesting question. That would be an interesting thesis topic. Is if you do more top-level ontological, which top-level ontology would you use? Would it really help your modeling process? And it's like the question in systems engineering of how much overall architecture modeling should you do, or is it a waste of time and money? So I'm curious about the you're getting by with using maybe in John Soa's words mid-level theories or mid-level ontologies. So I'm curious about the question of what would be brought in with more of an effort at ontological modeling. I think it's an open question.
Yeah, you are totally right. Actually, there could be some study, as you said, maybe like a one case with, one case without, and then a comparative analysis. For example, we can calculate per hour how much they are paying me, so that we can see if it is valuable for the company to implement. Something like that would be interesting, actually. Yeah.
Cool, thank you. Ravi Sharma, we're nearly at the top of the hour, so you're up next. Ravi, you're muted.
Ravi got stuck, I guess.
His picture's stuck now. It's not muted anymore. Might be a bandwidth issue. You want to try again?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yep.
You can?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Well, welcome. I think you are one of the rare speakers who comes from Greece. I had till a few years ago a colleague living there, Tony Kontoratos in Athens. He was working with me in NASA and also working back at the university at Athens. And he tried to work on the lost Atlantic city in his latter years. Anyway, welcome and thank you for still connecting with Aristotle and metaphysics. These are two good things. But now I come to your framework, Bear, which has many repeating numbers. That was one of the questions. So sometimes these are like process steps, and sometimes it is interpreted as a different entity. So what kind of framework is it, and how would you compare it with either business process related frameworks or enterprise architecture frameworks?
It is totally informal structure. As you said, we are not claiming that it is some sort of formalities there, but this is the process where we are trying to improve based on the, let's say, the praxis. So this is what I said is that we looked through all the frameworks, which is doing some similar work. And then we are trying to come up with maybe in the future, like a formal, as you said, BPMN or with the enterprise architecture, we can do such thing. But now our goal is not something like that, but going more informally. But the ideal case would be, as you said, like a proper structured, formally explaining what is what. Because I'm, as you said, sometimes I'm using the data collection methodology, which is a process, but sometimes I'm using the data referring to the set of evidence which we collected from the ecosystem.
So it is semi-formal kind of or informal architecture of sorts in Bear. Now, you are more than meteorology in Bear in terms of wind turbine parts and processes, right? I mean, wind energy processes. Okay. The other thing is, which Todd already asked you, is the internal and external organizations aspects. Now, are you saying that we need to look externally? That means inter-organizational aspects of the enterprise, and also look internally in the micro details of the parts of the organization. But there is also a concept of federation. And how would you relate your wind energy ecosystem to that federation aspect.
Can you explain more what you mean by federation exactly? Because there are
Federation
different
is
terms.
where each organization is almost independent in autonomy, almost, except they can access each other's relevant subsystems as per the permissions. For example, I am a steel supplier. I can reach an automotive company from the point of view of supply chain of supplying steel only. But I can't see how that steel is being used for which model of the automobile.
This relationship, it's a great question. Now the federation is actually in the literature called the more collaborative. Also, there are like they can also be in the competition and also collaborating at the same time. It can also occur. This is one of the questions actually. If you look at the survey, I was looking so that I was checking which companies are collaborating and which are the competing, so that I formally derived the companies which are competing and collaborating at the same time, because it is also important that to understand the ecosystem. You can do lots of analysis, in my opinion. It is because, in my opinion, this is one of the most complex system which can be analyzed. But my idea is I approach it pragmatically by answering the questions of the manager. That's my claim, basically.
Good. If the enterprise can serve the questions of those who manage it or satisfy the customers or the investors, stakeholders, then you have done the job, even if all use cases are not covered.
Yeah, correct.
So that's very good to get the important and low-hanging fruit out of the way.
Yeah,
Lastly, I enjoyed because I think in one presentation you go from models and theories and John Sova and so on, with whom we are all associated here in this forum. And you go to knowledge graph, then you go to Sparkle. You did not cover KGSQL, in which our chair, Ken Maslowski, is an expert. So what do you think from Sparkle to KGSQL usage?
Me personally?
Yeah. You don't use
No.
KGSQL, but you do use Sparkle.
Exactly. So that's what I wanted, because the question which was asked, I wanted to show them basically. So how I'm going to show it? I built the queries. I also uploaded in the GitHub page. You can see the queries. For example, in this case, I extracted the theory part and the data part separately to use in my meta reasoner, which I told. But based on the question, actually the query changed because I want to know something different. And based on that, I show something different in the visualization. But my goal is basically create some sort of interface, maybe, where whatever I shoot in the visualization, it maybe 50% understands what I am trying to do. But this is later research, so it is not now.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thanks, Robbie. Thanks,
Alican, I can talk
Thank
to
you,
you
Mike.
about. I can talk to you about KGSQL offline.
Yeah.
No, all right. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I will be interested.
Okay, so we're a little past the top of the hour. I had a couple of questions, but I'll leave that for now. Other than to urge you towards the business model canvas for deeper analysis of this stuff, but that's less of a question. This has been a great insight. You know, this whole track has been about how we connect reality to data, and some common questions are coming up. We saw last week with Gary's question to me, and this week with Janet's question to you, the use of different levels of ontology, the use of top-level ontology or not, whether ontology is predicated on data or predicated on the real things, or whether you need two ontologies or one. Do you save time by having more kinds of ontology, or do you lose time? Nobody knows. Like Janet said, there's a study to be done in that. So next week we're going to have a panel. I haven't finalized the lineup yet. In fact, Alican, if you want to be on the panel, I think you'd fit very well, because I want to address those kinds of questions and what is a pragmatic way of getting from ontologies of real things or concepts of real things through to data and the different querying languages and results and so on. So so this has been a wonderful tour across that problem space, connecting business analysis with data and data with the business, and some really good results. So thank you very much for sharing that. And yeah, with that, next week we will have a panel. I'd love you to join it. I've got a couple of other people lined up, and I should be lobbing a few questions at you and then opening it for other questions from the floor to see if we can tease out this whole value chain between the conceptual and the data and the real and how those all fit together. So thank you ever so much again, and I will hand it back to Ken. Thank you.